Yeah. We can talk more about this, okay? We'll talk more about this. Oh, like just the show in general? Tell me you know me. Yeah, merge it with me. Call me when you're with them. He's my best friend. Chris Amico? Okay, I gotta go. He's here.
Welcome to Rooted in Revelation, where we seek to make God's revelation our foundation in all of life. My name is Nick. I have Nate with us as usual.
Hey
And
guys.
we have a very special guest with us this evening, John Mcdonald. How are you doing, John?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good. We are very glad to have you. For those of you that don't know John, what we typically like to do is just give a brief introduction for you. So if you would just give us a brief, the short version of your testimony and kind of what God is currently doing in your life, that'd be a good place to get started.
Sure. Well, I've been involved in ministry since 1996. Went to Belhaven College, and then where I got my Bachelor Arts in Biblical Studies. From there, Whitfield Theological Seminary for my master's, which was, I think, providential in a way, because, as you know, Whitfield is an online seminary, or at least distance at that time. And so that was, I think, instrumental in terms of my own background and preparation for what I'm doing now. But I'm an old retired youth pastor and serve churches in Florida and Mississippi. Have a kind of a rich Presbyterian history, I guess you could say. Direct descendant of Scottish Presbyterian church planters. My home church was one of the churches they planted after coming from Scotland to America. And that was where I began my ministry there a long time ago in 1996, and still a member there. And so it's just been a great blessing to be a part of that church and its history, and to look to the future, having that foundation. So.
Praise God. That's awesome. So you were a youth pastor before, you said. What brought you from being in youth ministry, pastoral ministry, to being the president of the Log College and Seminary?
Well, I did my master's work in counseling. So I was working at a church and basically directing their counseling ministry and in youth addict counseling. And that was in Orlando. And I just felt that I needed to be closer to home. Only child, father's kind of getting older, family business, and several things kind of came together to line up for me to move closer to home. And so when I did, I was like, wow, what do I do now? This guy going to use me? How is he going to use me? And so I got involved with TNRS, the North American Reformed Seminary. And as a student, I was working on my doctorate. And next thing I know, they're like, hey, we need some administrative help. Would you be willing to serve as our registrar? And I said, of course, I would love to. And So I began to serve as registrar, and at the same time, God was opening doors for me to preach at several of the local churches who were in between pastors and just needed pulpit supply. So, I was kind of, I was like, well, how is God going to use me? And I mean, within a month of the move, I'm like preaching at a church, and I'm working with the seminary. And as time went on, I basically became part of the oversight board of the seminary and served there for several years, working as the registrar also. And then the day came when they offered me the position of the director of the seminary, which I did take. And so, God always is in control. And even when we think, hey, I'm done, it's over for me, the last chapter, not necessarily the case. I had no idea how God was going to use me. He did. And I'm so grateful for that.
Awesome. So before we jump into anything else, for anybody unfamiliar with the Log College and Seminary, previously TNARS, what would you say are some of the biggest benefits that the Log College and Seminary has to offer compared to other theological institutions? And would you say there's anything students would gain at a school like RTS that they wouldn't get from the Log? For those of you that don't know me or haven't heard me talk about this, from here on out, I will refer to the Log College and Seminary as the Log. So
that's perfectly fine. The way we like to kind of sum it up is we're completely free, completely online, and completely reformed. And the fact that we're completely online is, of course, opens so many doors because it gives us a truly, a global access. Students can have maximum flexibility in terms of studying with us. They can study anytime, anywhere, as long as they have an internet connection. Completely self-paced. Of course, your mentor, we are mentor-based, and your mentor may have a little bit to say about, your progress and may lovingly prod you along in your studies. But being completely online is, something, of course, that has to do with the technological advancements of the last 20 years or so. We couldn't do this without the level of technology that we have, and but it is great. It's a wonderful thing. Completely free. One of the things that we're able to do because of our online platform is to operate a seminary at very little operating costs. And so we can offer this program completely free. And that's so huge because, you have so many pastors who they're pursuing God's call, and they go to a traditional seminary, brick and mortar, and they're, looking at $50,000, $80,000, and this is after, of course, they're, undergraduate, and they may already have costs involved there too. And so they get out of seminary, they have this huge debt, and they're trying to pursue God's call, but they are now, could we say, hindered, so to speak, with a certain amount of financial obligation that is an obstacle. And we just don't want that, and it shouldn't be that way. So we have purposely designed a seminary so that there are absolutely no costs involved. Even the textbooks are provided. So the only cost you have is time and hard work, and that's the way ministry preparation should be.
I love that so much. I'm currently enrolled as a student at the Log, and I have been very blessed by my time doing coursework. I think one of the best things I've experienced about it is the fact that you get it's actually kind of funny. When I first showed the course to my pastor, who was my first mentor, and we switched churches, so I'm in the process of switching mentors for context. But when I showed the program to him, and he's a guy who has a master's, he looked at it and he said, "This associate's degree looks more like a bachelor's degree than an associate's degree than what I'm used to," and I've heard that response from a few other guys who have gone to seminary. Would you say that whenever you hear free seminary, people kind of balk and they're like, "Oh, free seminary," because I've encouraged other people to check out the Log because it is such a wonderful program. It has so many benefits for guys like me. I have 4 kids. I work, 50 hours a week, maybe more, maybe a little less. I serve in my local church. We do a podcast. We have a very busy life, and I don't have money to throw around. So the Log really is a huge blessing to a guy like me who has aspirations to not only just know God better, to serve my own family and my own church, and to be a better image bearer, and to be in communion with my God more deeply, but also if the Lord ever calls me into ministry later in life, I will be so much better equipped for that work. So it's a huge blessing. It's wonderful. Would you say that there's anything, because you have attended a college where I think you said your undergrad was like a brick and mortar where you were there, correct?
That's correct.
Would you say that there's anything that a student would get in a seminary like that as opposed to one that is online, like in this context?
As far as the education academics, I don't think there's going to be any advantage. The only advantage would be your peers being able to socialize with other students. Although we have also tried to basically address that through a virtual program where it's kind of like Facebook for our seminary in a way, but students can come on and join that, and they can, of course, talk and discuss the program, their studies. We can pray for one another. So, if you have a little bit of imagination where you can switch to a virtual mode, so to speak, I think we can basically address any and every issue that could be brought up in terms of brick and mortar versus online. But I really don't think there is, an advantage in brick and mortar. I don't want to critique brick and mortar institutions. We have some very fine institutions, and to be honest, online seminary is not for everybody. I guess I should take that back. I guess there's maybe one advantage to going to a brick and mortar, and that is that your professors are going to keep you on schedule, whether you like it or not. And with our online seminary, and some online seminaries are like that too. They have schedules, and we don't, because we trust the mentors to keep you on track. We trust you, to initiate those studies and to love what you're doing, so that you want to come on and study, and you're enjoying it. But online seminary, especially like this, where it's self-paced, is not for everybody, because not everybody's at the same point in terms of their own self-discipline. We have seen that with some students where they're like, hey, got into this and thought it was going to be, what I needed to do, and it's going to work well for me. And, it took me 6 months to complete my first course or whatever, or a year. And it was just way too open, and just did not work well for them. And it's not for everybody, but I think to many it is an absolute blessing, and it works well for a great many people.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And to be honest with you, the way that I describe at least the associates program, and I mean this in the best way possible, my pastor is my mentor, and I just kind of viewed it as guided discipleship. Like, he was keeping me accountable for being in the scripture and doing the work that was, assigned to me. And we were talking about it. And, you know, I was growing, and really, like, that was our relationship before this, except now I was working toward an associate's.
Right.
So, you know, it was a wonderful blessing. And, you know, even if there's anybody listening to this who, you know, you don't think you ever want to go into full-time pastoral ministry or anything, don't think that this isn't for you. Because if you have a discipleship relationship with an older man in the faith, like, or whoever, you know, that might be, this program could just be like a pre-existing template for your discipleship. If you wanted something guided with a mentor
Sure.
who met the qualification of the school, you know, and you're also working toward a degree program, or toward the getting your associates or whatever program you're in. So it's a wonderful opportunity. And again, I have nothing but good things to say about the log. So what are some of the distinctives about the log? We kind of already reviewed it. You know, you have a mentor. It's a free institution, and you kind of go at your own pace. Are there a few other things that make it distinctive from other theological education institutions?
Sure. You know, like the original Log College, we are mentor based. We follow the old pastoral apprenticeship model, which is the model that was followed up until about the early 1800s. I think Andover 1807, early 1800s. I know Princeton 1812, I believe. But before then, before your brick and mortar seminary model, basically education, ministerial education was you went to college, got your undergraduate, and then you studied under a pastor for several years, usually around 3 years or so. You studied under that pastor and prepared for ministerial examination with presbytery or whatever governing body that your denomination might have. But that was the model, and that's the way that the Puritans were prepared for ministry. And so the Law College, of course, William Tennant was there. He started the college, and it was also seminary at the same time. You see, because not only was he providing an undergraduate degree, but he was also mentoring these students and teaching them or mentoring them in their theological studies as well, in preparation for licensure and ordination with the presbytery. So, but we follow that approach. We believe that when you look at the New Testament, the model or paradigm for ministerial preparation is basically pastors disciple future pastors. And that's what we see 2 Timothy 2, and the things that you've heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. And that's our theme verse. That's on the seal of the seminary. That is the New Testament paradigm for ministerial preparation. That doesn't mean that we can't gather a group of pastors who serve as professors and have a brick and mortar institution. Again, I'm not trying to critique that at all, but when we do that, there are costs involved because we have to pay for the buildings, we have to pay for the professors, and it starts to get really costly. And so, but again, when you look at that New Testament paradigm, with a pastor who is one-on-one with a student, a ministerial candidate, basically we can overcome all these obstacles, finance, everything else. And I think that's the wisdom that we see in God's word there in terms of ministerial preparation. So.
Absolutely. I love how the academic guide puts it. LCS, which stands for Log College and Seminary, desires theological education to be restored to its rightful place, the local church. Ministry preparation is, after all, a part of the church's discipleship task. LCS seeks to serve the local church by providing an academic platform pastors can use in the training of their members for ministry and in the training of men called to the work of the gospel ministry. Our vision is to help prepare a new generation of Reformed pastors who are passionate for the glory of God, the proclamation of the gospel, and the equipping of the saints for ministry. There are some other quotes in there that are really great about some of the other distinctives you've talked about as well, but I thought that one kind of summarized the focus into the local church.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not trying to take the place of local church. We're just trying to serve as an educational resource for pastors, for the local church. We're basically presenting the academic platform that pastors can use to train their people, and not even necessarily to train pastors, but just to train their members in the Word. And so, we are very strong on the place of the local church in the life of the believer, 100% for that in all of our coursework. Of course, you'll see that we push and place an emphasis on the ministry of the local church. We've lost that in in current evangelical Christianity. We've lost a place of discipleship, and it's kind of interesting that being mentor based, we have a lot of applicants, and they're coming in and they're saying, hey, we can't find a mentor. Our pastor is too busy. And that breaks my heart, because I'm like, well, isn't the job of the pastor to disciple? And why would he not want to take advantage of this program? And don't get me wrong, I know that our pastors are way overworked. I mean, they're just struggling to keep their head above water many times. But at the end of the day, we can't lose sight of what the job of the pastor is, and it's not just to preach, but it's to disciple. And I think it's a shame that pastors feel like they're too busy to be able to do that task, which is what Scripture calls them to do.
Yes. One of the Well, let's try that again. I'm getting feedback from someone. All right, I think we're good now. One of the things I so appreciated as I am transitioning from mentor to mentor with our change of local church is that my new mentor just he was familiar with the Log College and Seminary. I think he was considering a doctoral program through the Log, and our pastor is a wonderful man who serves God and serves the church, and he's not afraid to smell like sheep, as Jim Neuheiser puts it, I think.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it so much. When I asked him if he, knew of anybody that could be my mentor, or if it could be him, he was a little bit hesitant, just because he said, I want to make sure that I could do a good job for you, but I have all these other responsibilities. And,
Sure.
we eventually prayed through it, talked about it. And, we, came to what we believe is the best option, and we are moving forward. So it was such a blessing. But yeah, like you're saying, it's part of the pastoral duty for that discipleship, for that training up of men. It's such a great blessing when you're in a church where the pastor has the resources and the ability to do it, because if there were like 5 guys in my church who were in the degree program, I imagine that would be rather difficult on top of all of his
Sure.
normative pastoral responsibilities. But it's just it's a huge blessing to have that kind of support, and I'm very thankful for that. Nate, we've been talking for a little while here. Do you have any questions you want to ask, or anything, any input?
Maybe not a question just yet, but I mean, I'm nodding and smiling, because I mean, it's phenomenal what you're doing, John. And I mean, I'm just grateful for it. I'm not in the program, but I've considered it. Maybe I'll consider it in the future, but I just think it's so wonderful. your uniqueness, I see as a very strong biblical concern of what you guys are doing. And, yeah, like you're saying, it's no bashing at all on, seminaries like Southern or RTS or Westminster or something like that. But I just find it so helpful for people that, can't necessarily afford that, necessarily be able to do that in their current circumstances that God has them. But I just find it so encouraging to hear that there's opportunities for people like you guys, the listeners,
Yeah.
that you have a chance to get this kind of training and do it within the local church, which I think is just so huge. I think 21st century evangelicalism is just lost its awareness and deep conviction of how important the local church is. And I think what
Absolutely.
you're doing and how you're working all this stuff out for people like that, I think is incredible. I mean, I think of not only getting educated, you're growing close to your pastor, you're growing spiritually, you're growing in the great, you're growing in grace, under being shepherded and discipled in order to do the same thing down the road for more people, more and I just love.
Sure, and the local church context, it provides so many opportunities for testing your gifts and ministry skills and developing those, which is one thing you don't see in the traditional brick and mortar seminary. You see attempts at it, of course, and they're doing the best they can to give students opportunities. But in that local church context, the student can really test out his gifts and really serve the church, and so the local church is blessed and the student is blessed at the same time. And going back to kind of what you were saying earlier about how the school kind of fits the time, so to speak, in 21st century evangelical Christianity. If we look at the trends from a human perspective, I think we're going to see the traditional brick and mortar seminary struggle. I think we're going to see a decline in a number of students, and there will be financial woes and those kinds of things. And we're going to see more and more online education. We already see it. I mean, with dare I say it, with COVID, there was this huge rush to distance education, and it's like, oh yeah, it works. Well, we've known that for a long time, and it hasn't been such a big secret to us. But now the college, the seminary, they have to acknowledge the advantages of online studies, and most of them have, of course, developed their own online programs, and injustice, we're doing it before COVID, but they were accelerated for sure with that, and so there's no denying that it can be done and can be used in this way. I think we're going to see more and more, especially the American church. Your smaller churches are already struggling, and they're struggling to have a pastor and to be able to support that pastor. With our model, we can have a guy come in who has much more financial flexibility and can come in and serve a small church, and just really not be hindered by that financial debt, and not even have to be concerned about that financial aspect. I think in the future, we're going to see a lot more bivocational pastors, and so our model fits right in with the situation that we see in American Christianity anyway. Of course, we hope and pray for a great revival, and of course, we know the power of God, the power of the Holy Spirit, who can bring this about, and which was, of course, one of the great things about the original Log College was their emphasis on the power of the regenerating power of the Holy Spirit, sanctifying power of the Spirit. Look at the great revivals of the past is certainly not ask God to do this. We have to pray it down, of course, and prepare for that. But just from a human perspective, the trajectory of American Christianity is not very good. So we can, we're doing our best to help to provide pastors with some options, ministerial candidates with some options, so that they can continue to pursue God's call.
Yeah, that's so encouraging. Yeah, John, so appreciative of what you're doing. It's just incredible too. Another thought I was having too is just, in them big, was it block and mortar? Is that what you guys were saying? Or brick and mortar? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
In them kind of context, it can be difficult because there's a lot of students. The teachers have a lot of responsibilities over a lot of men. And sometimes you could, like, I was thinking for myself, I could maybe feel kind of like if you're struggling along and it's kind of hard to get that more personal mentorship. And I see that as another pro for Log is because you actually get more hands-on with someone that's mentoring you through that. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
you don't have to be worried about kind of getting left behind,
Yeah, it's quality over quantity. The original Log College had about 20 graduates, but look at the caliber of those men. Gilbert Tennant, Samuel Blair. Just about every one of them were amazing. And then the second generation Log College men, Samuel Davies, and men like this. Just phenomenal men that God used in such great ways. And so. It's not about the numbers. It's about the quality of men, and that goes back to the quality of education and ties into what you're saying. That one-on-one time and focus that our program allows. I think it makes a huge difference.
Praise God. So, John, I have a question for you. So when I first applied to TNARS, we were kind of in the middle of moving from Charlotte, North Carolina, back up to Buffalo, New York, and I was not able to basically start my studies at that time a few years back. And I was actually just looking over the academic guide, and I think back then you had to subscribe to the Westminster Confession of Faith or the Second London Baptist Confession of Faith in order to enroll as a student. And in the current academic guide, I believe it's more of agreement with different just basically a doctrinal statement. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, students have always had to confirm a student confession of faith. And that's basically right there on the application. And we've never required students to have to affirm the Westminster Confession, but a student confession, yes. And it's basically just the essential doctrines of Christianity. Mentors, of course, different story. They do have to affirm the Westminster Confession of Faith, or in some cases, we do allow some mentors who can affirm the London Baptist Confession or Savoy Confession of Faith for the Congregationalists that are still around. So yes, we do have some flexibility with our mentors, but yeah, our mentors do go through a strenuous process in terms of their application. We do, of course, when we look at a mentor, we look at the big picture, his academic record, his pastoral opportunities, and basically his resume, pastoral experience. But very important to us is his confessional affirmation, and we have had some mentors who applied who had too many exceptions or problems with the confession. And we are a very confessional institution. We place our flag right there at the Westminster Confession of Faith, and that's where we stand. And so, and we have to, because, again, in our model where we're mentor based, just the very institution itself is mentoring and shaping the student, and so we want to give them a very healthy dose of confessionalism and an appreciation for confessions, and to know why, to understand why confessions are so important, and we want to foster a love for confessionalism, and that's one of the expected outcomes that we pray for, is love for the confession.
Would you say that there is an attribute or quality about the people who are successful in the log versus who the students that don't end up finishing? Like, is there a difference between those people that is clear, or is it kind of case by case typically?
Yeah, it's kind of case by case. A lot of it comes down to, of course, self-motivation and self-discipline. It does take a person who is highly self-disciplined to finish the course, so to speak. It comes down to timing, or available time, and so there are some I think it's case by case for sure, but self-discipline and time is really the two big ingredients in terms of being successful, and having a mentor again who's really plugged in and lovingly prodding you along in your studies and encouraging you. That's huge. So three big ingredients there to successful student.
That's awesome. Let's see here. So what I'm just curious for my own personal benefit. Do you have a favorite course or a favorite thing about the log personally?
That's a hard one. I love everything about it. I look back on my own studies, and I'm like, man, I wish it was available, for my undergraduate work and all the way through. But I love everything about it. We have a lot of great courses. Really hard to single one out. Yeah, I guess the biggest thing I love is just returning to that pastoral apprenticeship model. It's so huge. I mean, even with the advent of the seminary, as we spoke of, early 1800s. For example, let's take Princeton, for example. Some people are like, well, Princeton was the continuation of the Log College, or at least the College of New Jersey, and not necessarily so. It was an assimilation of it for sure, but it was not really a continuation of it. And we would go into length on that and on our website and in some of our literature about that. But even with Princeton coming on the scene, the great Princeton, which was a wonderful institution, no doubt about. But even within 30 years of the existence of Princeton, you had pastors who were questioning the quality of students coming out of their programs. Gardner Spring was one. I think he was writing in 1830, 1840s, and he was saying, look, we have these graduates coming out of Princeton are great academics. They're sharp. They have no pastoral skills whatsoever. And he said, we need to get back to the old pastoral apprenticeship model. We need to get these students with pastors in the context of local church ministry, so they can watch him shepherd the sheep. And he said, this is an element that is missing in our day. I mean, and that was 1840. That was, 20, 30 years, after the beginning of Princeton and after the beginning of what we would call the modern seminary model. So he was already, there were already red flags, just within 20 or 30 years of the operation of these institutions. And so returning to that model is huge. And I think that's the one thing, if I could single out one thing, it would be that, is that we're trying to get back on track with that New Testament paradigm.
That's great. So, John, I am presently enrolled in the Associates of Theology program, and I'm considering transitioning over to the Bachelor's of Divinity because I am a man and I am over 30, and I appear to meet the criteria for that. I'm curious, would there be a
Sure.
benefit to me with doing like the Associates of Theology, the Bachelor's of Theology, and then the Bachelor's of Divinity, or like the MDiv? Or would it be more advantageous for me, if I wanted to pursue the Bachelor of Divinity and I have a solid theological foundation, to just switch from the Associates of Theology to the Bachelor's of Divinity?
Sure, that's a great question. And a lot of it boils down to, do you see yourself doing any graduate work in the future? The Bachelor of Divinity degree is basically the Master of Divinity degree, but it is open to men who have no undergraduate foundation. And Greenville Presbyterian Theological Seminary does the same thing. They have a Bachelor of Divinity degree too, and it's for this purpose of men who are called later in life to gospel ministry, and they have no undergraduate foundation, nothing, but they want to be equipped for pastoral ministry. And so this program basically gives them everything they would get from a seminary degree, the Master of Divinity program, and but it opens it up to them without that undergraduate foundation. But the cost, of course, is that then it becomes what we would call a terminal professional baccalaureate, and it just doesn't carry academic weight because it has no undergraduate foundation. And so, your graduate studies, if you're looking to do master's work or doctoral work, it's not going to get you there because it just has a totally different purpose, and it's not, should we say, weighted academically, so to speak. It's a professional baccalaureate, it's terminal, but it serves its purpose for many men. If you're looking to do graduate work, doctoral work, I would say definitely go ahead and stick with the ATS, BTS, MDiv track. But it's just kind of, you have to kind of think long term and kind of, do you see yourself serving in the pastoral role and really no other academic pursuits, or do you see yourself, moving forward from pastoral work, or even while you're serving as pastor, doing some more academic study? Then you might want to stick with your current track.
Yeah, that's really helpful for me. Thank you. Thank you for that. There was one other question I had about the Log College is offering. So I don't know if this is an affiliated thing, or if it's different, or if it's part of the Log College and Seminary. Is there an evangelistic program, like a 2-month thing related to the Log College and Seminary? Or is that a totally separate entity that's also called the Log College and Seminary?
Yeah, there was a program that basically started several years ago, probably 10 years ago, that was called the Log College, and like you say, it was basically an intensive evangelistic training program, but really had nothing to do with the institution or our institution or anything like that. I do know what you're talking about. It was like an evangelist program that was tied into a local church. I can't recall the name of that church. I'm sure it was a great program, and maybe it may even continue to this day. I don't know. But yeah, it's not related. Neither is the Log College Press, which is a wonderful resource. Is not related to our institution. But yeah, I do know what you're talking about. Um, I think that's wonderful. We need a lot more programs like that. Not only have we lost discipleship, but we've lost evangelism in the church today, and we need that desperately. So
For sure. What would you say to a guy who wants to pursue a program of study through the log, but they don't have a GED or a high school diploma? What is the benefit to them getting the GED before, beginning to pursue the program with the log?
yeah, well, our associate program is very focused. It's very theological. Your typical associate's degree. You do have things like world history, different math courses, things like that. With our associates, is very very much focused on theology. So your GED, your high school, your diploma is basically going to be the preparation that you need for that theological study. You already have your history and math and those kind of things already there. So it is important because we do not offer those courses in our associate program. They are important educational backgrounds to have and to bring into that program. So yeah, it is important.
For sure. How about you, Nate? Any questions at this point?
Yeah, well, I'll say I'm that indirect person that he mentioned. So, well, I'm older now. I'm almost 29, so not super old, but yeah. So back in my high school days, before the Lord saved me, I was, drug and alcohol, it was just a big idol back in my life before the Lord came and rescued me. And unfortunately, I made the decision to leave 12th grade and drop out of high school. So, now going forward, I mean, I never seen the point for me personally to get it. But I mean, I love theology. As you can see, I love books. I love reading. I love learning. Been doing it ever since I became a Christian. So yeah, I'm the indirect man, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that we have to, of course, to watch is in terms of accreditation and attestation, I guess you could say. We have to be sensitive to some of the academic requirements, and we try to make sure that we're completely aligned with the most strenuous of institutions. But we have a heart for men in situations like yours, and we want to help them all that we can. But we kind of walk a fine line sometimes when it comes to regulations that pertain to accreditation and just credibility and those kinds of things. I think people are surprised when they we're a free seminary, but then they look at our requirements and our academic guide, and they see, wow, this seminary operates just like any other institution. I mean, there's entrance requirements and those kinds of things, and it's something we have to do to maintain our credibility and because it's so easy just to take pot shots at institutions like ours, where it's like, where they're free, they're a diploma mill. I challenge anyone to look at our program and come away saying that we're a diploma mill, because we probably, our requirements really far exceed even the most strenuous of seminaries. And, just our MDiv program alone, 116 credit hours, that rivals anybody out there. We're right there with Greenville Seminary, which I greatly respect and love. And that's not to boast or anything like that, but it just shows you that, we take this very seriously. And just because we're free doesn't mean it's going to be any different in terms of the level of academics that we're going to expect from our students. And that's one way we help to maintain the credibility, in the theological academic world is to have those requirements and to hold to them and to expect them from our students. And I think most people are blown away when they see that and just consider what we really do expect and require.
I think that it is really an attestation to the fact that, like, there's such a high calling for an elder, for a pastor, and you need to be a man who's been proven. And there's nothing special about me, but like realistically, I have 4 young kids. We're trying to have more. I work a job, for more than 40 hours a week. And if I am going to, get an associate's, a bachelor's, a master's, and if I do pursue pastoral ministry, I would hope that whatever, church I would candidate with or what have you, would see the fact that I have juggled all these things over a number of years alongside faithfully being a husband, father, church member, serving in all these capacities. And I imagine that the quality, and again, I'm not trying to knock on any other seminary, I'm not trying to knock on any individual, but the fact of the matter is, if you're juggling all these responsibilities, all these things, and you can come out of the other side of that, you're not doing it because you're chasing a career. You're not doing it because you're chasing really anything other than being faithful to God, in my opinion, because if God's not your motivation for this, then you're just not going to make it through, because you're going to have other things come up in your life. You're going to have hard times. You're going to have all these things that will lead you to a point where you're like, well, I have to sacrifice somewhere. Maybe it's the thing I'm not paying any money for that's not essential to my life at this time. If when I look at guys who have graduated from the Log and they have juggled so many different things in life to get their program to serve God in whatever capacity he's called them to, again, it's not to say anything negative about somebody who came out on the other side of a different seminary, but I personally can appreciate the level of difficulty something like that would take. And I'm still just in my first degree program. So.
Oh, absolutely. And, something that I thought about while you were sharing that is, when you look at the typical seminary program and it's kind of crammed into 3 years, most seminary graduates are going to go over 3 years, 3.5, 4 years. And they're still cramming. And sometimes I wonder, like you said, what has to be sacrificed in order to do that? And sometimes it's the education itself. They're taking in a lot of information. It's like a fire hose, and they're not able to really sit back and meditate and think through and in their mind get a good grasp of the content, or even be able to form or develop the right questions to ask, to help cement all of that together. And with our model and the flexibility it allows, it really does give the student the opportunity just to slow down, think, meditate, he doesn't have to cram the information, but he can really focus on it and really get a firm grasp of that content. And we want students to not only know the theology, but to know the why behind it, and to be able to not only articulate it well, but to defend it and know why they believe what they believe. And because that's where you get true commitment, is when you know why you believe what you believe. There's the commitment. That's where you're going to find steadfast men who will hold fast to the faith.
Amen. Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely appreciate that. John, do you have any success stories that come to mind, or just accounts of guys who have done the program at the Log College and just have had a fruitful ministry for the Lord that you could share with us?
Sure. Yeah, two guys come to mind right off the bat. One man is a pastor in Africa and completed the Master of Divinity program under TNRS several years ago. The man had no regular access to a laptop or computer, so he worked out a deal with his mentor and basically did all of his work handwritten notes, on paper, and and we've been able to see all these notebooks and pages filled with the work that we require, and it's so humbling, because we throw around our iPads and laptops and everything, and we're typing away, and we're able to hit save, and boom, it's all there. This guy had a pen and some notebooks and completed the curriculum, and it's incredible. Loves the Reformed faith. Just very humbling. So grateful to be able to make an investment in that man's life. I feel like he also made an investment in ours too. And another man, this man came to us to study our PhD in Puritan Studies program. He was a Church of Christ pastor, and it was like, I've always wanted to study the Puritans, Puritan history and theology, and again, he was a Church of Christ pastor, and within 1 year of studying the curriculum, had converted to the Reformed faith. And man, I tell you, he's just passionate for the Reformed faith, and he's so outspoken in a loving way. I mean, not to say he's cage Calvinist or anything like that we hear so much about. Not at all. Very humble man, but just by reading the Puritan literature, came to see the truth of the Reformed faith, and to examine the Scripture and say, what does the Scripture really teach, and even to challenge his own theology at that point. I mean, that's just huge, and I'm so grateful to be part of that man's life as well.
That's awesome. That's so encouraging. I love hearing stories about things like that, about how God worked. I can't imagine, like you said, just sitting there taking all those notes. Like, I take a lot of notes, and it takes a little while to do on a computer. I can only imagine doing everything handwritten and then send it over to America. But
absolutely.
It's funny. So in the first class, there's a teacher who I have just benefited so much from. I don't think he's a famous preacher or anything. I had never heard of him before. His name is Scott Kay. And
Yeah.
he does he does the how to get the most from you reading your Bible, as
Yes.
well as the how to study the Bible. And I remember, and my wife's sitting right here, and so I need to actually do it with her now that I'm recalling. But I went through the lectures that he did, and I was just like, this is the best teaching I've ever heard on like how to study the Bible. And just he is such a good teacher. We're gonna have
Yes.
him on in October, I think. I reached out to him.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have him on, thankfully. And I just think it's so cool that you get some guys on here like I think it was the Basics of the Christian Life Bible Study by Jerry Bridges. That lecture in particular was just like I'll use an apropos illustration. It was just a gold mine of content. He talks about I think it's Proverbs 2, and about how we're called to mine the scriptures.
Absolutely.
And it's just some of the most convicting and soul refreshing content I've ever had. And I've had a year of undergrad studies at a brick and mortar Bible college, and I've done some classes here and there at I did some Voice Online. I've done Covenant Baptist Theological Seminary. I think Sam Waldron's school has changed names since then, but I mean, I benefited from all those places, but again, just it was at this point when I was going through these courses in particular that the scriptures just started to become more vibrant, and I just realized that my own personal piety was so lacking, I suppose. And I was just neglecting so much in my own personal walk. I actually had like a cage stage about it, like where it was just why am I so passive? Why am I so complacent? Like, and I just started to look around. I'm like, is everybody like me? Like, and it's like, it took me like a month to realize like I need to calm down a little bit because I got so excited. But I mean, if anybody is just listening to this and you want to listen to some courses, you can get all this through the Log College's website. You can just go to the course catalog, click on the Associates of Theology, and then you can click on the hyperlink to get to the content we're talking about. And again, Scott Kay is just some of the best teaching I've ever heard.
Let me share a quick story about that. One of the students that I personally mentor was so blown away by that series that he basically tracked Scott Kay down and went and visited him. And they did live, of course, in the same state, so that helped out in terms of logistics. But he actually tracked him down and went and visited him and personally shared, how grateful he was for those lectures. And this young man is a true blessing. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we had about a 2-hour conversation about election over the phone, because even though he was very much involved with his church and serving with the youth ministry and really was plugged in and was, student of the word, everything, this was the first time he ever really had to look at Romans 9 and say, what is this really saying? Because I know what I think it's saying, and I know what I've been told that I'm supposed to think it's saying, but what is it really saying? And came face to face with the doctrine of the election and all 5 points, in fact, of Calvinism. And it was just a beautiful thing to see that young man put all the pieces of the puzzle together for the first time, and really see, wow, there's a system here in Scripture, and it makes sense. And man, it's a beautiful thing. And again, there's your one-on-one, model right there. Me being able just to talk with him and go through scriptures with him, and hour turns into 2 hours. I mean, turns into another phone call the next night, that kind of thing. But this is a really wonderful model. There's a reason we see that model in the New Testament.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny that you phrased it the way you did. I actually had to track Scott K down as well because he was at a church in Georgia, but he had left like sometime last year. So I listened to I figured out on YouTube when he had left because he was no longer in like the main picture on the sermon video.
Right.
So I started listening to like the last couple sermons, and they finally said the name of the church he went to, because if you just Google his name, he doesn't show up easily. So I listened to like a couple hours of sermons, I think, or fast forwarded through them or whatever, to finally find it, to actually track him down. And I don't track people down. I don't have time to do that. But like like you said, the lectures were just so good and so thoroughly biblical. I mean, he doesn't make a statement that isn't qualified by scripture. I feel like it's just so wonderful to see teaching that's so steeped in revelation. And so it was so very thankful for that. But were there any other courses that or any other specific teachings or classes within the program that he found particularly edifying or like similar to Scott K's?
Well, he is in the ATS program. He is currently in Introduction to Theology. So again, he's chipping away at the lectures. And again, I think that the first grouping of lectures is Essentials of the Christian Faith. And so you've got R.C. Sproul and you've got MacArthur there, and they're talking about one of the lectures is on election, and so he was again just working through the curriculum, had to kind of face something that he's never had to really face before, and I think just kind of in the back of his mind, basically said, okay, well, election is this based on what I've heard everybody, tell me it is. But to actually have to go into Romans 9 and Ephesians 1 and Acts 13:48 and all of the other passages that speak to that doctrine, and really have to square with the question of what does the scripture really teach on this subject, was huge. And so he's prodding right along in that, and has which was interesting, because he was like, I'm not quite sure what my family's going to think or my church is going to think, and he's kind of dealing with some of those things, but he can no longer deny. And I think we've all kind of or many of us who were raised outside of a Reformed context, we've all had that moment where we've had to say, oh, wow, this is what the scripture teaches, and I've got to follow the truth wherever it leads me. And but just working with him, walking him through these stages of his Christian life, it's just a huge blessing to me, a tremendous joy. So
I would really love to get his information from you, and I'd love to have him on and talk to him as another student who's doing the Associates of Theological Studies. I'd love to talk to him and just have a conversation on the podcast about that, and about his experience and mine. So after we finish up, if you think he'd be interested, I'd love to hook up with them and have a conversation about that. How about you, Nate?
Absolutely.
What do you have any other questions at this point here in the conversation?
I was just pondering my own cage stage back years ago, and for me it was John chapter 6. That was the one I just couldn't escape. Jesus's own words regarding the teaching of election and preservation of the saints. I remember I was Arminian at the time, Wesleyan kind of Arminian, Assemblies of God kind of guy, and I remember, there's these guys that came to this place I was at, and we called them the Pittsburgh Calvinists because they're from Pittsburgh. And this one guy just kept reading John 6 with me. He's like, well, what's the text say? And I was like, well, it's still conditional. And he's like, what's the text say? And he just kept, pushing me back to the text. And eventually it hit me. I was like, oh man, I can't really wiggle out of this one, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a moment of realizing that for me, it was just, oh wow, God really is sovereign over salvation. And that point on, it was just like a whole new, you know, scripture is just brand new to me in a way of seeing God's sovereignty, his his grace and his love, and just seeing how you know, the whole doctrines of grace played out. It was just like an eye-opening experience for me.
Mm.
You know, and you know, through all that, it led me to confessional Presbyterianism. Now, you know, I love covenant theology, and now seeing the big scope of God's covenant dealings with his people, and I'm kind of going through that phase now of you know, Reformed covenant theology, and going
Sure.
through that cage stage right now. So yeah.
Yeah. You know, and thinking back to just talking about that one particular student, you know, I think it was very important for the Bible study skills course to precede the intro to theology course, because when he came to these passages like Romans 9, Ephesians 1, John 6, Acts 13:48, and so on, he had the interpretive skills and abilities to be able to look at those passages, and he couldn't just do some hermeneutical gymnastics to get out of them. He was forced by, you know, good interpretive skills and methods to take a real good look at these passages, and remember, context is king, and be able to apply all these interpretive principles and bring them to bear on these passages. And I think that's one of the big reasons why he was able to look at those passages and fairly say, you know, what does the scripture really teach, and able to really dig into the scripture and do exegesis and come away reformed. Because I mean, you know, it's hard to do that. Go to Romans 9 and bring good interpretive skills there, and not come out reformed. So
I almost got kicked out of my Bible college for reading Romans 9 in our dorm and becoming a Calvinist. So that was my cage stage. I went to I won't say the name, but I went to an independent fundamental Baptist Bible college. Before I had known any formal theology, I just read my Bible. The Lord saved me when I was 18, and I just read the Bible and I loved it. And I didn't know what Calvinism was. I didn't understand much. My church back home was much more of a MacArthur style IFB situation. And then I went to my college, and it was one of the smaller colleges. It's Crown College of the Bible. It's in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's still around, but you know, I didn't really fit in. I met another guy who like was from Liberty University at this IFB school, and we just didn't fit in with everybody else because it wasn't our pedigree. And I remember we became friends with the Calvinists. My buddy was tapping his feet to some hymns the one day in chapel, and I had written down a question in my planner, like, why do we do this? Why do we do that? You know, why are there these traditions that I don't see in scripture? And this guy comes up into the dinner line that evening, and he says, "Hey," we're like, "Hey." He's like, "I'm the guy that wrote the answer to your questions in your planner." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about, guy." Like, I haven't looked at my planner. He's like, "You're not from around here, are you? You were tapping your foot." We're just like, is this an agent of Satan? No, it was just a Calvinist. Interestingly enough, Calvinism was listed as a separate religion on some of the missions conference banners and stuff. So I heard all sorts of strange things there. I heard that Satan started the heresy of Calvinism in the Garden of Eden and things like that. So it was it was pretty wild. But we had actually almost got kicked out because we were becoming Calvinists just from seeing it, and you know, the school was very opposed to that. So I can really appreciate some of the things you're talking about being able to defend what you believe, because, you know, sometimes you thrive in adversity, in those situations where you find yourself like looking at the scriptures and not being in agreement with some of the conclusions other people are coming to. And the Lord really used that time to work into me an understanding of like a healthy fear of a healthy understanding of what the fear of man is and what assurance of salvation is. Because I used to look at these guys and be like, how can these pastors and these teachers be Christians and believe these things? And I'm just this random kid, this random like 19, 20-year-old who became a Christian 2 years ago. And I'm coming to all these different conclusions. And I didn't know about Calvin. I didn't know about Spurgeon, really. I didn't know about Luther. So I didn't really have that foundation to stand on. And I'm just so thankful for things like the Log that exist, where there is the solid Reformed tradition in education available, again, within the context of a local church. And we have some family that works for Southern and in these things, and so it's been interesting to talk about with some of them, because it's like there are benefits to it. I'm not trying to say bad things, but I don't see the wisdom in going to a seminary where you're going to incur anywhere between like $40,000 to $100,000 of debt to go into a vocation, if you can call it that, but to go into ministry.
Sure.
Where you're not going to be earning substantial money typically. I mean,
Right.
it just doesn't make
I
sense.
know guys that, graduated from RTS and 10 years later are still paying student loans. And, that's truly a shame, to be in that situation. And again, I'm not critiquing RTS or anyone like that, but it's just very difficult to not only get your undergraduate, but then to go to a graduate program, a seminary, and have debt upon debt, and then, as you say, go into a profession, if we can call it that, that usually is going to not be the easiest financially, and so yeah, it's very difficult. I'm thankful that we can provide an alternative to that. Something I was thinking about, you were talking about some of the other seminaries, and maybe another advantage to having a program like ours is we don't seem to be so susceptible to the theological winds, or should call them theological winds, but cultural winds, I guess we should say. And things like critical race theory and all of these things are buzzing around in the seminaries today. We don't have any of that, and maybe our model helps to shield us from some of those things. I know our commitment to the confession does, but yeah, you look at some of the seminaries and you wonder how did these things creep in there? How did critical race theory get into some of our very strong conservative seminaries? And just think about the recent PCA General Assembly. How did things like revoice creep in to our denomination? And I think seminaries certainly form the intellectual culture of our ministers. And so sometimes we have to look back to them and say, well, what was going on there? And then we have to ask the greater question, how in the world did this even get in there? I don't know, but I feel that our particular model and our commitment to confession certainly shields us from a lot of the cultural headwinds, if you will, that seem to be making huge impacts in other institutions.
Yeah, that's a blessing to hear you say that. I mean, I know that the Log is different than other institutions just by virtue of how it's set up. But yeah, critical race theory is crazy. It's just, how could you? I was part of a Facebook group full of good people, well-meaning people, but there was a guy who posted that his church, they weren't reading, like their congregants have a book club, and he was saying how he was so encouraged that of the 15 books on that book club's list, not one was written by a white man. And I was like, whoa, who, why does that matter? And because I'm not that involved. I don't really watch the news a ton. I don't really get involved with politics a ton, at least not at the time. And I knew about critical race theory, but the borders were so fuzzy and ill-defined that nobody could define it easily for me. And I was just like, whatever. And then I realized this is what critical race theory was, when you start saying that truth isn't truth on the merits of its truthfulness, but it matters the person's experience and who they are and where they came from, and that's part of defining what truth is. And it's like, well, that's not how I see truth. I see truth as being objective and unchangeable, and
Sure.
whoever's getting me closest to that objective, unchangeable truth through their writing, that's who I want to read. And I got into a discussion about it in this forum, and again, of good Christian people, and it was just so discouraging to see the way that critical race theory has been accepted, and the perception on truth, on what truth is, has changed even in the church. Yeah.
Absolutely. We're very big on worldview. We have, of course, several courses that focus on worldview studies, philosophy, apologetics, obviously. But we also offer each year a lecture, a worldview lecture. It's called the Sons of Issachar Lectures, and we bring in a guest speaker, and he addresses a particular topic. And of course, you can go online and hear those for free, and hear each lecture. I believe we started in 2019, but 2019. But anyway, yeah, developing a Christian worldwide view is absolutely essential, or an essential part of Christian discipleship. I think that is probably going back to the question, well, how do these things creep in? I think that is part of the issue is, we have not discipled our people to think like Christians. We have not focused on worldview studies as much as we should. And so, it's very easy to discern the issues with critical race theory when you have a strong Christian worldwide view. Very easy to look at the issue of abortion, very easy to look at the issue of homosexuality, and all the hot button issues of our day. But if you lack that, then you can see how people could be swept away and led astray by a lot of the strong voices out there. And so I think it's critical that we bring back worldview studies into our discipleship mix. You'll certainly see it in our curriculum. So important.
That's great. I know that Nate probably has a few things to add at this point. Why don't you give your thoughts on some of that, Nate?
Excellent stuff. I'm a big Van Tillian, so I'm a big presuppositional apologetics guy. So I'm all about Christian worldview. Some of my favorite guys: James N. Anderson, Frame, Scott Oliphant. Some of my we actually have Scott Oliphant coming on Tuesday to talk about some covenantal apologetics and some Van Til. So looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're I guess going back to the question about what makes us unique is actually which we do appreciate good presuppositionalism, and we think the transcendental argument certainly has its place. But one of the things you'll notice in our apologetics program is we're returning to the old Scottish common sense realism methodology, which was basically what the Puritans followed is what early Princeton followed. All those guys, Alexander, Hodge,
B.B. Warfield.
B.B. Warfield.
Mhm.
Basically, Scottish common sense realism and classical apologetics are kissing cousins. Hard to discern. It gets into epistemology and where we start, so to speak, in epistemology is what kind of sets the two apart. But we're basically, hand in hand, same thing. So you'll see a lot of R.C. Sproul in our curriculum, but yeah, we push apologetics strongly. It's very important. We do not, we think that, for example, presuppositionalism, we certainly think that it has its place, and the transcendental argument certainly has its place, and very much appreciate that. But yeah, we're one of the few schools that really teach and push, classical apologetics, and so it's interesting to be where we are in that sense. But a lot of good men, and there's a lot of dialogue to be made here. One of my professors, Dr. Wayne Kenyon, who is passing the glory at Belhaven, was actually one of the big classical apologists of our time. Studied under John Gerstner. The saying was R.C. Sproul was Gerstner's right-hand man, and Wayne Kenyon was his left. But Dr. Kenyon and I had a lot of discussions about, he was actually, when he passed, was involved in writing a book on classical apologetics and presuppositionalism, and just the dialogue of the two schools, and maybe where we're talking past one another and certain things like that. And so I think there's a lot of good things that we can share and work together on, and that's an area that has not been addressed as it should. And I'd like to see a lot more doctoral work in the area of apologetics, and from our own doctoral students. That would be great to explore some of these categories in apologetics.
Yeah. Well, hey, I still love you, John. We're good. we're broadly on the same team, so
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can't not like a lot. I mean, I love my classical brothers, man. I mean, there's nothing but good to say about all those guys. I love Sproul. He was kind of my papa into Reformed theology, and I love all those guys, and very appreciative of all those guys. Gerstner, and I would say agree way more than I'd ever disagree. So absolutely,
and I think we just need to have more dialogue, and we need to. And I think this is what Dr. Kenyon was working on would have been so wonderful for the church is, we spend so much time attacking one another's model, and we seem to be just kind of missing the whole point of apologetics. But we need to have some healthier dialogues, and we already know we have different epistemological starting points, so
right.
We know that, and I mean we could talk more about that and explore that, but yeah, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding too in terms of the two camps, and we shoot past one another, and we really need to come together, as you say, and really share the really strong points of our systems, and hey, I'm all about pulling out transcendental argument if I need to, if I'm talking with someone, because I mean it works, and it works within the classical system as well. But yeah, man, it's feelings mutual. Appreciate your love for the good man. let me throw in a good name here, Gordon Clark. You might like to read some of his stuff. I know he and Van Til weren't always seeing eye to eye, but Clark is man, he is in terms of presuppositionalism is a treasure. So don't neglect him.
Yeah, I don't Van Til's team on that one, but I do appreciate Clark as well. You know, I kind of
Gotcha.
consider myself as the lost child at Westminster Philly. So
Good deal.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that R.C. Sproul, when he talked about presuppositionalism, kind of like you're saying, he didn't view it as adversarial. He actually, I think, praised a lot of the precept guys because I think what he said about them was that they could pinpoint the flaws in the arguments of other people better than like the people in classical could. And kind of like you're saying, instead of like trying to argue about whose system is better, hopefully we're taking the best of both sides and improving both
Yeah.
of those apologetic methodologies with each other, iron sharpens iron kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think too, when it comes to, apologetics and, presuppositionalism, certainly incredibly useful in terms of modern philosophy and what we've seen there. But now that we've moved into postmodern, it gets a little trickier and almost like almost back to the days of Hume. I see the need for Scottish common sense realism to bring us back to our common senses and see through a lot of this postmodern gibberish that we're forced to hear all the time. But yeah, great men held different positions. Love them all and can learn from them all. So we try to foster respect for those in Reformed camp who differ from us. And, we don't, one of the things about Reformed theology is that it tends to, and I don't know why, but, we get so excited about the truth of Scripture and we have a great zeal for it. We're not always disciple well in terms of expressing that and fostering a love for fellow Christians who disagree with us. And going back to R.C. Sproul, I think he was a great model of that, who could respect men who held differently. And even just in terms of speaking of, like, just say Armenians, he was like, these guys are Christians, they may not be as accurate in some areas theologically, but these guys are Christians, and and had love for them and respect for them, even though we differed theologically. So that's one thing we hope to do at the Log College is to help our students know the why behind what they believe, and that takes away the threat. They don't have to turn to any kind of raise their voice or whatever. They don't have to turn to those kinds of methods of arguing the truth. We have a different goal, and hopefully we can foster that kind of climate with our students.
Well, it'd be great to have you back on another time, John, to talk about worldview and apologetics. Honestly, Nate, it might be cool if we could get a couple people on a conversation about that, just to talk through different perspectives on that and just have an edifying conversation that's much needed. So
yeah,
I think
absolutely. That'd be cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the biggest thing. We had John Frame on our show not too long ago, and man, his heart for being as ecumenical as we can be, that seems to be a danger a lot of the time, or a weakness sometimes in the Reformed community is is sometimes we forget we're all on the same team, you know. And you
Yeah.
know, as Frame called them, the Machen's warrior children, you know, it's everybody's trying to separate everybody, and everyone's in small little camps, separatist camps. And I think we have to get back to the big picture, like you're saying, John, is recognize that we're all really on the same team, and we're though we may differ on some of these, I would say probably mainly minor things. It's just how we nuance and define our terms, and they're important. Be passionate about them, argue them, but remember, it's your brother in Christ, sister in Christ, whatever the case. We need to respect each other, and as First Peter 3 tells us, you know, and with gentleness and respect, and we need to honor each other. You know, it's so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, John, I think that our time is just about coming to a close here. But before we do end out, we do like to give our guests an opportunity to say a final word, really whatever you want, an exhortation, or it could be like an elevator pitch for like the Log College, and you know who that might be a good fit for at this point in our world. I think actually enrollment's pending right now until the website's being updated, but you know, whatever you'd like to end on, we'd love to hear that. So
Sure. Well, I'd like to invite everyone hearing the podcast to check out our website, logcollege.net. Check out our programs. The great thing about it is you don't have to be enrolled to take part in these studies. You can, with basically, I think it's 3 clicks, maybe 4 clicks, you can be in a class listening to lectures. All the textbooks are there. Click on the link and download the textbook. It's yours. You don't have to be enrolled. Obviously, you have to be enrolled to gain credit and be under the mentorship of an approved mentor. But yeah, you can take advantage of our curriculum right now and begin to grow in knowledge and grace of the Lord as you study. So I'd like to encourage everyone to do that. Check out all of our website. We do have Theolog, which is our annual theological journal, and it is free. You can download the PDF. Just came out with our inaugural issue. I wrote a history of the Log College, and you can read about that and makes the connections between the original Log College and how we are the 21st century continuation of that. And will be our second issue will be coming out toward the end of the year. So take a look at that. Take a look at our Sons of Issachar lectures, in our worldview lectures. A lot of good stuff. Obviously relevant issues that we need to learn to think like a Christian as we approach these issues. And you'll find a lot of helpful lectures there. And we'd love to hear from you. If anyone has any questions about our seminary or anything, please contact us. There's a link there on the front page of the website where you can contact us. Love to hear from you, and love to know how we can be of service.
awesome. Again, John, thank you so much for coming on the podcast here with us. We really enjoyed it. And to all of our listeners, thank you. We love you, and we will look forward to seeing you next time.